just to let you know. All right, we could just keep doing. Hey, everyone, glad to see that you're here. This is the after party, after show. You can see our rogues gallery here. Simply Secular Dave, Glenn Chesterton, and of course, remember, Sammy Jenkins.
G'day, folks.
Good day it is. So far, so good.
Yeah.
It's coffee
I
time.
may have an answer for you, Andy, actually, in regards to that 22% for Australian gun deaths.
Oh, yeah.
So I found this article, and long story short, in the 90s, Australia's homicides totaled around 300, which means in a bad crime year, homicides were increased by only 20 or 30 victims, which could swing overall rates noticeably. So when the number's that small, 22% sounds big.
But it's not. In whole numbers.
No. But what I did find, this article was written by the Foundation for Economic Education. And I thought, oh, okay, well, it sounds legit. But overall, the article was, well, look, here's the heading. It's the myth that Australia's gun laws reduced gun homicides. And I thought, okay, I smell a rat.
Yeah.
And so I looked them up on just Wiki, bit of simple, quick math. Looked them up and found that they were funded by Jasper Crane, who is an executive of DuPont. And who is DuPont? So lo and behold, surprise, surprise, DuPont want guns in Australia.
Right.
Who would have thought?
Are they a stakeholder in like Colt or one of the weapons companies? Do you happen to know?
No, I literally thought they were just sort of horticultural, chemical, and seed. I know they have a monopoly on this World Seed Bank.
Yeah.
One of the
they also do a lot in plastics and the high strength plastics for gun parts.
Weren't they making napalm back in the Vietnam War?
Pardon me?
Weren't they making napalm during the Vietnam War, or was that another?
That's entirely possible. You know a lot more about American war history than I do, for sure.
Yeah. You were talking about the overall what's the actual stats in terms of gun deaths in Australia now?
I'll tell you. Talk amongst yourselves.
All right, let me take I'm going to show a couple of the previous panels earlier. That's U.S. stuff. Where's Australia in terms? See, Australia isn't even on the map, on the list of gun-owning countries.
Yeah. Well, the thing is this, is that obviously it's access to firearms, right? Gun deaths, if you don't have access to them, you're not going to be able to,
Yeah. That's it's about as simple as that.
Yeah. There was a couple things, if we still want to talk, we can pivot later, because I have some things that you were talking about in the show that I was kind of thinking of, and I don't want to go off topic if you guys still want to talk about that.
Well, no, this is interesting. Blazing says DuPont is an American company formed by the merger of Dow Chemical. Dow Chemical, I think, was the maker of napalm, and DuPont, Numerous and Company in August. So it's all right. So that's interesting. It's a combination of the two companies.
Yeah, and if you look into the history of their competitors like BASF and others, they all are cut from the same cloth. They're all in competition with each other for the same grim dollar.
Yeah. There seems to be money in making things that go bang. A lot of money.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Glenn?
No. Basically, you were talking about. It kind of ties into Bernie, and also because I know you touched kind of on healthcare in the US. It's kind of like it was kind of a little bit like, I don't know if it was on the outside fringes. I think, like, this is just my opinion, what they call social democratic socialism or whatever, you're just branding it wrong.
Yeah.
Like, in my opinion, you're just completely branding it wrong, because if you told people, came honestly to them, because I think if you said regulated capitalism, you'd still scare a shitload of people.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in Britain, there's some of the conservatives and then some of the NHS has been sold off. But for the most part, even conservatives in countries like Canada know that if they try touch that socialized medicine, they will be thrown out very damn quickly. Yeah. So
well, a lot of it is branding. I know that Andrew Yang, during the election, went through a couple of different terms before he settled on universal basic income.
Yeah.
And people's opinions varied widely in terms of, and the third rail was like some kind of terminology that had the word socialism in it. And that's why they went to universal basic income. Yeah.
Well, it's also the fact that people hated Obamacare but liked the Affordable Care Act.
Oh, I'm gonna pluck my freaking eyes out. So many freaking things this morning. Trump with 3 Supreme Court justices, which I know, and then this whole Obamacare, Affordable Care Act.
Granted, that's just pure stupidity. But what I mean is, it's branding, right?
Yeah.
It's come down to branding. And honestly, if you look at the percentages of people that probably want universal health care,
sure,
it's because it was. I remember Bill Maher talking about how when it reaches a crescendo, a certain zenith, that's when the politicians start to listen. So when it came to, for instance, legalizing pot, it's if it was 60-40, they're not going to listen to you. It's when it gets 70 or 80. It's the same thing with the legalizing of gay marriage.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, it's if it's 51-49, is this going to get me thrown out of office?
Yeah.
And it's if it reaches a high zenith like 85 or 90 or something like that, you might get a thing. But it's also going to take a massive legislative swing to even come close to, which, as long as you have gerrymandering, is not going to happen. So
the idea that or the concept that we're a rational species and that we make rational decisions and that we're going to make rational political decisions. Oh, that is just so untrue. Yeah. That is so untrue, because these policies have an inertia to them, right? Yeah. And to tip it over, to make a change, you got to build up a lot of inertia.
Yeah.
About the whole British Columbia provincial tax versus harmonized sales tax back.
That sounds incredibly interesting, and I haven't heard about it, Dave.
Well, years ago we had GST and PST, right? So the federal tax and the provincial tax, and it added up to, I think at the time it was 14%. So they decided in British Columbia they were going to change to a harmonized sales tax system. So that you'd file one tax. If you were a small business, you'd file one tax with the government, and all your taxes would fall under the HST. They also put in a plan to drop it 1% every, I think it was 1% after the first year and 1% every year and a half after that. So the tax rate was going to fall by 3% overall for every small business. There was certain things that were difficult to change because they were not taxed federally and they were taxed provincially.
Right.
So they went through the whole list and figured out, okay, this is a provincial tax, so we're going to add it to the HST. This is a federal tax, so we're going to add it. And there was a bunch of stuff that got dropped. We're just not going to that anymore.
Yeah, same thing happened in Ontario. We had HST and GST, and basically, again, like if you go grocery shopping or stuff like that. I don't know if it's like that way in BC, but in Ontario, food items, I think that aren't prepackaged, or
Right.
certain things, food items you don't get taxed on, or I don't think, or it's some of the stuff is tax free.
Ours is the other way around. If you buy 6 or more, like if you buy 6 apples or 6 cinnamon buns, you don't get taxed on them. So
Yeah. Okay.
anyway,
Well,
so
no,
they
it's-
put this
yeah.
system in place, and we ran with it. It cost $9 billion to change the entire system over, to move all the employees, to re-employ all the people who were going to be put out of work by the change, because we no longer had 2 offices of government taxation. So they went through this entire process, and then the politicians got involved and said, oh, this is a bad thing. This is a terrible thing. The government's watching you. It's a big brother thing. It's a 3% tax decrease and a simplified system. The politicians got involved, and this freaking idiot of a man who had been disgraced in politics before and wanted to stick his toe back in the pool, went after this as an issue and caused BC to have a referendum which just barely voted out the HST. So they spent $6 billion changing it back, and everyone pays more tax now.
Who is that idiot?
I believe it was Mulrooney or Van der Zalm? It was one of those idiots from back in the 80s.
Was it actually the former PM Mulrooney?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
It may have been. I can't remember exactly who it was. It was one of those jackasses that I hated.
And all this for freaking sales tax. Like, it's not even like, right, this is just actually sales tax that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Not actually not actually income tax, just sales tax.
The system itself is like, at the time I was working for a tax consultancy, and we were like, this is the dumbest thing we've ever heard of in our lives. Like, changing back to a more complicated system where you pay more tax. Like, the government didn't get out and like they figured, oh, people are too smart to fall for this.
Never bet on smart.
Yeah, and they bet on smart and they lost, and now
Don't
we
bet on
have
smart.
2 taxes here still, and it's the dumb. We're the only territory, only in all of history, that has ever changed back to a 2 tax system from a harmonized tax system.
I've said this before, but we all know what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, right? Incompetent people don't realize that they're incompetent because they're incompetent. There's some kind of corollary to this, is that smart people don't understand how dumb not only are dumb people, and maybe how dumb they are themselves, their own cognitive biases. And so, when smart people think, oh, well, this will work because it's obvious it will work. It's like, oh, no, my friend. No, that's not necessarily true.
That's the thing in Canadian healthcare right now. Everyone's saying we don't need a 2-tier system. Well, if a billionaire wants to pay $1 million to have his appendix out and go to the front of the line, and that money is going to go into the Medicare system, let him pay.
Yeah, I agree. That was just, I'm going to put this down until we're done with this topic.
I'm going to read coffee.
Okay, re-coffee, right. Interesting thing that Sammy sent over in the private chat, this particular shows the gun deaths per country. And it's an interesting little graph. It's an interesting little map.
Before you scroll down, I want to play a little guessing game, okay?
Okay, I like games.
Per 100,000. I thought this would be a bit fun, or in a very dark sort of way. In a population of 100,000, if let's go somewhere really bad, Honduras, 60 people in 100,000 people population are killed by guns. Okay, where do you think America stands? How many people?
Well, I did cheat, and I did look at the numbers before sharing, so I can't really play the game. I did. I'm guilty. That's what I am.
It's actually a lot lower than I thought. I'll be honest.
Let's take a look here at what the actual numbers are. Here in the States, firearm-related death for 100,000 is 12.21. And you can see the suicide rate per year out of 100,000 is 7.32. Now Australia, right? So 12.21 firearm-related deaths here in the States per 100,000. In Australia, it is 1.04.
But you see, the thing is, when people talk about how low the U.S. is, you've also got a population of 300 million people. You know, so if it was higher than that, it'd be really fucking scary. And what? Sorry, again, what is the population of Australia? It's 17 million?
28.
Oh, I got it wrong. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Okay, I was. Okay, yeah, no, I was
We've
thinking
grown a bit.
But bear in mind,
I'm
there's like 1 million Australians that live in Vancouver, right? So,
well, actually, I think it's the same with Ireland, because I was when I was in Australia traveling, I made this joke because all we ever did was run into Irish people. So I spoke to one of my roommates who were just like renting out a room at this house, and he was Irish. I go, seriously, man, are there any of you any of you left in Ireland? They go, no. If we did, we'd probably sink the fucking thing if we all went back.
Well, you can blame the English for that. The English were pretty helped the Irish to leave the country. It was almost as if, I'm not going to say conspiracy, but it's probably more stupidity and ignorance and cruelty that with how the English managed Ireland to get the Irish out. Yeah.
Well, if I put it this way, I'll give Britain credit. With Brexit, if anything, it's going to make an amalgamated Ireland a lot more likely with the Brexit, with the stupidity of Brexit.
You were right about that. There's going to be a crap show that goes on between now and however this resolves itself, and who knows how long. Because you got to ask yourself whether or not the Brits. Everyone except for Northern Ireland wants to manage Northern Ireland for the Unionists. Yeah, that's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
And
Well, you see Brexit was, well, we're not going to get into the politics of the lies and the bullshit, all that. But Brexit has the one thing that when Scotland went and had their referendum, I think it was maybe a decade ago, on becoming their own thing. They are on separating from Britain. They went to Britain and said, if we vote to stay in, you've got to promise us you're not going to leave the European Union.
Yeah. And
they just turned around and surprise, because Britain has never stabbed Scotland in the back ever. They just did exactly that. And it's like, and the thing is, I was speaking to a friend of mine who's British, and he's actually he knows his shit, and he was saying, the problem now is, if you want to have a referendum, you have to go to the House of Commons in Britain to get permission to have that. So they pretty much, Britain has given the 10 million, 60 million middle fingers up there and said fuck you. But now, and screwed them over, and now Scotland doesn't have a right to secede because they have to get permission from the. It's basically like, you abused me. Now can I please leave? And it's
it boils down to force. I think when it really comes down to it, the Brits could easily have it. I mean, the Scots could easily have another plebiscite, and let's say 60% decide to leave. Are the English willing to expend blood on keeping a country like Scotland within the UK? That's of course they're not going to do that. It would be difficult to think that England would be willing to go through this whole cycle of the Troubles again in Northern Ireland, sending troops in to keep things pacified there. Especially with the nationalism going on in England.
Well, no, it's ridiculous. Like, honestly, like, the only thing I won't litigate, like, well, if you know the story about a dead pig's head in David Cameron, that's why they call him Pig Fucker. Do you know the story?
Don't story.
Yeah.
I remember it in the news. Like this
Yeah.
is years ago at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, for the guys,
Tell it
people that
anyway.
don't know, he was in Eton. I think he was in Eton, which is a incredibly expensive private school. And one of their fraternities, one of the thing was, I don't know if it was a hazing or so, you had to fuck the mouth of a dead pig, and he did it, and so that's why they call him Pig Fucker. So, like honestly, David, if they strung up royals for crimes against Britain, what he did basically, he said, "Do you want to have a referendum?" And Britain said yes, and then he goes, "Bye, fuck you all, I'm leaving." That's basically what he did.
Yeah.
That's what he did. He goes like, "Screw you, I'm out of the mess which I created."
Yeah.
And now he gets a gold-plated pension after him and his chancellor fucked over the British public for a decade.
Yeah, there's no doubt that there are large, and I hear clicking sounds. But there's a good argument to say that there are these large forces that are affecting all of us and affecting governments and how countries evolve and change over time. But individuals who hold lots of power, it can be very fluky. You could be talking about someone like Cameron who says, well, we're just going to do one vote, yay or nay, 50-50, just a coin toss. And if that vote never happened, more than likely the UK would still be in the Union right now. And we wouldn't even be having this discussion about Northern Ireland.
Yeah. Well, no, that's the thing is I remember I was actually, because I was born in England, moved to South Africa, moved to Canada, but then I moved back to England, and I was there when Cameron was voted in. And you see, I'm not going to defend Tony Blair because he did some stuff that was, there's a lot he did wrong, and New Labour was just a catchphrase, really. But
hey, he was in the coalition of the willing, my friend. That's what he was.
Yes. The person that took over when he stepped down, Gordon Brown, because what happened was if people who haven't been to England and a lot of other countries, their sales tax is added in before, like it's already added in. So when you go and you pay £1 for something, you're only paying £1. You're not having the tax on afterwards. So what happened was when I got there and up until the crash, the sales tax, what they call the VAT, was 17.5%.
Right.
Gordon Brown dropped it down because he, being an economist, I think he was an economist, knew very well that if you drop it down, he dropped it down 2.5%, so it's 15. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot to people that are driving Bentleys, but to people that are working class,
Sure.
that 2.5% is a lot, and you started to see positive stuff. And then what happened was I even commented on Facebook. I go, when Cameron got in, I go, prove me wrong, but I think you're Thatcher. And now you want to know what the sales tax in Britain right now is?
No.
20%.
20.
It's 20. It was 20. It might be different, but when I left, it was a 20% VAT, and it's they try. Their thing was we're just going to go full austerity, and it just screwed. And frankly, they frankly didn't. I don't know how their voodoo economics was right up there with Reaganomics in terms of. It just did not make sense. You can't save yourself out of a recession. You got to spend your way out of a recession. To an extent, if the population isn't spending money, you're not generating generating any money, and you're not propping up the economy. You have to have people spending money.
So this is true. If you're in a recession, from what I understand, you got to spend your way out of the recession. However, it also shows you why you should be prudent with your money when you're not in a recession.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And prudent doesn't mean traditionally fiscally conservative either. It just means not being stupid with your money, not doing like a quazillion tax cuts when time, to actually pay off things, to put in investments. So when the wolf is at the door, you can spend money.
Yeah. Well, you see, tax cuts work if they're done across the board. But what we've seen in I think it's happened in Ontario as well, and what you saw in the U.S. is that when the Republicans come with tax cuts, it's not going to help the middle class, it's not going to have the low class. It's going to help the 1%.
Yeah.
Or the 0.1%, basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So, well, without ending up in trickle-down economics, explain to me why there is any need to give cuts to, say, anyone that earns over 50 million.
Is greed inappropriate?
Go higher, go 200 million. I don't care, but like, do billionaires need tax cuts?
If you're making millions of dollars a year, I don't see why you need to have a low tax rate on those.
I can give you two reasons. One of them is those people who are billionaires are company owners. They are employing people. And I think for every person you employ, or for every step of people you employ, you should probably be given a tax rate relief based on the tax you pay, not on the tax that you would have paid, or on personal income or anything like that. I think that the whole structure of CEOs and CFOs is a completely different object. But I think for the people who own companies, there are two factors. One is, how many people are you employing? How much are you pouring into the economy? How much of the money you make is part of the circulation of GDP? The other thing is, what would they save moving that company to another country like Canada or Australia or somewhere else? If they could just pull the pin and go work somewhere else and save $1 billion, they might.
Yeah. You see, my issue. Sorry, Dave. You say you were an accountant, or you worked as in that field?
I'm a data analytics specialist, and I worked for a tax recovery consultancy and a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, because my issue is that.
I'm sorry, Dave. That just sounded evil. That's all.
Yeah.
What's that?
It just sounded evil.
It is. It's completely. I've told people many times. All I've done for the last 25 years is work for Big Evil.
Yeah. But
even the way you're sitting there silhouetted in that big armchair.
You might as well have a Dr. Evil cat with you, just kind of like, yes.
Where's my Garfield?
Yeah.
But it's my issue is when you get up to, I know it's thing, but when my issue is that what you were saying, I agree to a certain extent what you were saying, but my issue is when places like in the UK, places like Starbucks, Amazon, and all of those, they get tax rebates. They don't pay 1 cent of tax.
Right.
And that is flat. Like because I know a lot of small, like where I live in Ontario, there's a lot of like small business in terms of, and those are the people that I think personally need the tax breaks more than some company that employs thousands and makes $20 billion a year. You know, like frankly, the small business is the one that.
I'll say this. This is similar to like a lot of gun arguments in a way, because a lot of gun arguments don't understand how people act in real life. Like, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Well, that's not absolutely, it's a little bit more nuanced argument.
Well, that's why we want to regulate the people.
And the idea of, or the concept that people have huge, I know, dude, I'm sorry.
I love it.
People having vast amounts of wealth in a society warps that society. And if anything, you see that here in the States. As soon as that Eisenhower tax level went down due to...
It was 90% at one point, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's not 90% off the total amount. It was just, if you make X amount of money, if you make, like a ton of money, then the money that you make is going to be heavily taxed. And that means individuals are people are less likely to pay CEOs hundreds of millions of dollars. People are more likely to invest in the companies and invest in their communities. But when you have anyone with a ton of money in the society, especially in a society like the United States of America, it's going to warp that towards oligarchy over time.
Yeah.
Can I,
Well, also-
can I just say there's countries out there who have addressed the exorbitant salaries and golden parachutes that are toxic in the United States. And
Yeah.
one of the problems that they've come up against is when you limit the best CFOs, CEOs, and top tier people, when you limit their earnings in the company, they leave. They'll go to work in Germany. They'll go work somewhere else. But, and I will say this, there are countries who have figured this out, and there isn't a discussion in the United States about it yet, but there are countries where the CFO and the CEO can only earn 11 times or 14 times, depending on the country, of the average of the non-executive employees.
Yeah, that's a reason.
And they are given bonuses based on company overall performance or departmental overall performance. So if they're really that good and they're really doing a great job, and like if your boss said to you, hey, if you're a forklift driver and our efficiency goes up, I'm going to double your salary, great, right? But these people who are at the top tier, they don't want to do this because the economy can dictate what they can earn rather than their performance. And
corruption is the thing that dictates what they earn. You know, given enough money, they can pay people off.
I think there was a there's also those are also the same countries that have strict laws in terms of I think it's Germany where something a little bit different, but it shows you overall, like in terms of employee satisfaction, that as soon as quitting time comes, you cannot send an email to an employee or cannot communicate with them until the next day.
Oh, really?
And you can like it's basically okay, 5 o'clock, I'm done, I'm home. They're not allowed to say they're not allowed to, like your time is your time, and that's obviously makes for, you know, I would think it'd make for a happier work environment if you don't have to. Oh God, it's 7 o'clock and I'm getting 15 emails about something that happened that we can be done tomorrow. You know.
I will say, at the sound of sounding like a Bolshevik, which I'm not, I'm much more of a Menshevik than a Bolshevik, just for the record, that the nature of the revolution is international, right? The idea that we are not concerned about other people's welfare that don't live within our certain clique, that don't live within our certain country, has obvious shortcomings, whether we're talking about Central America and with the amount of immigration that we're getting here in the States, or in Syria, or workers' rights in other countries. It's like we need to be aware and caring about how people conduct their business and workers' rights in other countries.
I just
America
think
simply needs free fucking healthcare and raise the minimum fucking wage, and then go from there.
Yeah.
So
wasn't it
in the United States about the $15 minimum wage, and there was some pushback against that because $15 in New York doesn't mean the same as $15 in Montana. And the argument on the pro side of raising the minimum wage nationally is, what's wrong with giving a few people in Montana a little more fucking money? Right? Like, really? Really?
Well, wasn't it like? But if I remember, if I seeing it correct, if you actually gave the wage with the rate of inflation and compared it, because obviously the rate of inflation, the pay has not even come close to staying. If you gave a livable or a inflation-based wage, the minimum wage in the U.S. would be about $23 or $24 an hour, wouldn't it? Like something.
I would say it's something like that. I remember
seeing that.
I don't even know what a living wage would be like in Boston, to tell you the truth. It would have to be close to $25 or $30 an hour. Yeah, to tell you the truth.
Because what I do is I work in. You were talking about on your show about working in restaurant stuff. I've done that. That's what I've done most of my life. And I remember when I first started serving, it was $6 an hour. Now the serving minimum wage, I don't know if it was just in Ontario, is $12.40 an hour. Whereas I know in some places in the US it's like $2 or something, like some parts of the US, if I'm not mistaken. Andy?
Yeah. The what has worked out for many servers, waiters, waitresses, the front of the house, is that as the costs have increased, in terms of the prices for the food, right? In terms of the meals, they will get a rise in pay effectively because people are always going to, tip maybe 20%.
Yes,
So
yeah, exactly.
It's kind of baked. It's the people in the back of the house. It's the cooks, the wait, and the dishwashers.
Yes.
Those are the people who are suffering from not having a reasonable minimum wage.
Yes.
We have to stop letting these companies off paying people shit wages. Pardon my curse words, but it's an open forum. We've got to stop letting these people off paying people shit wages and saying, well, you're going to make tips.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. That's not how it should be.
Yeah.
And like you said, Andy, how does that work out for the guys at the back of the house?
Yeah.
Most of the places out here, they tip out a percentage of what they receive to the house. But tip the
we do that, yeah.
Tip the guy who cleaned your table, the guy who made your food, the guy who washed the dishes, everybody there. If you had a good experience, those tips should go to all of the restaurant staff equally, and it shouldn't be necessary for them to pay their goddamn rent.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, the way the restaurant I worked at, I've worked at restaurants where they do a house fund, which is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, illegal now.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was their last restaurant I worked before that, it was 4%, which is, just don't get me fucking start on that.
Yeah.
And they kept the tips from the takeout. That's another. I'm not going to get into that whole shit. But the way I have it at my job right now is, overall it's pretty decent. We don't actually tip house fund. We tip the hostess, the bartender, and the kitchen, and we do tip her like the tip out, which I'm not particularly fond of, but it's whatever. We tip a percentage of our tips because the company has to pay on credit card payments. So it's very low. I don't really mind that. But I mean, overall, I don't mind tipping out the kitchen. But yeah, it truly is like, if I'm making $300 or $400 a night, I'm going to give the people that help me money because that's just me. And I think that's overall. Yeah,
but that's one of the things I hate is going to a really nice restaurant and a server happens to be passing and I say, excuse me, could I get a glass of water, please, with no ice? And they go, oh, I'll get your server for you, because they didn't want to work somebody else's table where they're not getting a tip.
Yeah. You see, that's you see, I've always my last two jobs, this one and my last one, we pool tips. I didn't used to agree with it. In certain instances, because the last two jobs, my last job, issues with whatever the tip out, whatever, we work well as a team. So if we're working well as a team and I'm fine with tipping, it's sharing tips. It's because that way that shit doesn't happen. If you pool tips, everyone, and that's, and also the problem is I think that's just ignorance. Like that's just ignorance. I've been doing this job for over 20 years. I know for a fact that it's a glass of fucking water, like, and even if it's like getting ketchup or getting whatever, the front of house is a team. You're a team. You work together. Yes, you don't get tips from that table, but so what? Be a decent.
The other thing I want to point out about this, and it's brutally typical in Vancouver, but there are a lot of hostesses and some servers who are absolute shite at their job.
Oh yeah.
But they are an F cup and they wear stilettos and they wear tiny skirts and they get tipped more than the people who actually do the work. And if we paid people based on their performance and paid them a living wage, those people would be out doing something else somewhere else, and people who were competent at their job would be working there.
Yeah.
It is pretty privileged. That's what it is. And unfortunately, in this kind of business, that kind of business, it's much higher privilege than in other areas. But yeah, there's pretty privileged across the board.
Well, you see,
my turn.
Oh, sorry, go. Sorry, Sammy. Sorry.
I just got to get this in before the conversation gets too far off it. But in Australia, we don't tip. The minimum wage, well, although it could be a little higher, is decent enough that everybody from out the front to out the back is getting paid the same. Because you're getting paid decent, you're going to do a good job. You don't do
Yeah.
a good job. You don't keep your job here.
Yeah.
The tips we give here, if you can't, what I don't understand is that person out the back, or even the person out the front, but who's living on tips, then goes and has dinner and has to help support the person bringing their dinner.
Yeah.
Like, the system's broken.
Yeah.
So in Australia, your tips are whatever the change is from the note that you hand over, which is getting rarer. They usually have a tip jar on the counter, and most employers, if they're not stingy, will split that amongst their staff. But it's usually bugger all.
Yeah.
No, that's a
And
good
you don't
system.
feel obliged to tip. You don't feel like if I don't tip, someone's not going to eat or feed their kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
It's such a broken thing, tipping.
Well,
It's difficult to understand how it became such a radical idea that people should be paid fairly in this country. It's absurd.
have you seen that video on how tipping is based in racism?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The story goes that when they it goes back years. I don't know the exact how it went, but they would hire black people in wherever the South or wherever, and they wouldn't pay them, so the people would tip the black thing. So it started off tipping in the U.S. as pretty much a white supremacist thing, which is weird to think of. But yeah, it's because a lot of what people don't realize is that if a customer doesn't tip me, I still got to tip out on. I just still give the bartender money, and if God forbid someone walks out on a table without paying, like does a runner,
Yeah.
a lot of places make you pay it. Like you don't.
Actually, that's illegal in BC. They can't do that anymore.
Oh,
It's
okay.
the restaurant's responsibility to do that.
Yeah. Well, I've luckily been doing this 20 years. I think I've had it happen to me 4 times in 20 years. And again. I'm not trying to blame the people that it has happened to, but I don't want to be stereotypical, but the people that it usually happens to are not let's call them mental midgets. Like they're not. It's like we had a thing in England. If someone got screwed on a thing and someone walked out. And it happened to the same girl like 3 times. I'm going like, why are we doing this? The school clearly can't do her goddamn job if she's constantly having people walk out on their bills.
What?
A lot of places in Australia that are that small, so bigger places don't do this generally, but small businesses, I can't really think of any food places where you get your food before you pay, which solves that whole problem. Pay, order,
I like that
the
idea.
food comes.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, then it's also like.
But then that gives people an easy opt out on tip, because how do you tip without knowing what the service was like?
Yeah.
And that's the problem with tipping.
Yeah.
Right.
I have to admit, knowing what I know and having come from taxation, I never tip on debit or credit card. I always tip in cash.
Well, in general, that's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, because people are less likely to get taxed that way, right?
Yeah. Well, you see, the whole thing is this: is everyone goes a lot of people say like, how you still do this job? I go, trust me, it's not because I love dealing with drunk people at 2 a.m. It's because the money's good. Like I wouldn't I would probably have found something else to do right now, which I probably should, because there's no retirement package for servers, but like I do it because I can make some pretty goddamn good money. I was working a breakfast place where I was walking out with, I was starting work at 6:30 in the morning. I was done by 2, and I had the rest of my day, and I was walking out with anywhere between $150 to $200 in tips on top of what I was making on my wages. Like,
breakfast places are great because you flip over tables really fast.
Oh God, yes. I was I had a 5-table section. I was serving like 25, 30 tables a day. It's a quick turnover. It's easy money, and the truth is that what you were saying, Dave, about there are places that that it's has nothing to do with talent, has to do with the size of your talent.
Your smile. Call it your smile.
We'll call it a
Yeah,
smile,
we'll
yeah.
call it the smile. And honestly, like I worked in my first ever serving job. I found out later it got taken over by this guy, and he basically, I found out like he was like the girls' skirts got higher up and higher up, and he was like pretty much they were sitting on the. Oh god, it's creepy how it got, but I mean it's like, and it's the whole Hooters. It's all the whole Hooters thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's I don't care how good your
In
wings
the
are.
90s, I worked at McDonald's as a young teen, not a sponsor, and I think I was on about $9 or $10 an hour
Yeah,
at 14 and 9 months.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think that I don't know I know that in England at one point there was I don't know if it's still that way. The minimum wage was based on your age. So if you were like 14, your minimum wage wasn't going to be the same as someone who was 20 or something, which is understandable because at 14 you're usually living at home. It's just a part-time job,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we
But
had
yeah,
ranges.
When I was younger, I was offered a bartending job at Celebrities, and if you've ever seen the Pride Week parade in Vancouver, Celebrities is the place that's just going freaking bananas, and they've got a huge stage out on the street. And the guy who owned it took it over, and he renovated the whole place. This was back, I don't know, 20 years ago, and said, "Man, do you want a job bartending here? This place is going to blow up." And I was like, I don't know if I want to work in a gay club and don't know if I want to be a bartender. So I passed on it.
Yeah.
But the place blew up. He was right. It's the place in Vancouver. And it's a gas to go there.
On my dream job, Dave.
Sammy, what is the minimum wage in Australia right now?
I should know that actually, but in my industry, people come in, so only having either not done their certificate or doing a certificate, so not even a diploma level, they start on $35 an hour.
No way. This is lies. That can't be true. Say it again, Sammy.
Yeah, they start on $35 an hour.
So is that
I'm probably on 65
Wait, what kind of dollars are these?
Australian.
What kind of dollars?
But
now you were saying, like, for instance, restaurant workers, would they get the 35 you're talking about? Like, is that
God no.
no?
So, see, that's in the. I do what Andy does, so it's basically $20 an hour, which is fantastic. $740 or a 38-hour week.
Yeah, which is that livable in place like Sydney or?
God no, not in Sydney.
Okay.
No. I could barely afford to live in Sydney. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how anyone lives there anymore.
It's the same. It's the same as like living in a place like Toronto. Although where if you get a studio apartment, God, you're lucky to pay under $1,500 a month. Like a studio apartment is under. If you see a studio for $1,500, you jump at it. Like I heard, is it true, David? Like one point, the average apartment in Vancouver's like $3 or $4, like in Vancouver's like $3 or $4 grand or something stupid like that. Like $3 grand.
I live in a 715 square foot, 1-bedroom and den. And they just put it up for rent because I'm moving out. I'm moving to a house. I'm in the process of moving. That's why there's only plants behind me and I have no green screen. It's all over at the other house. So they just put it up in the paper for $2,500 a month.
25. Yeah.
Well, that's the issue.
But it does have a nice view.
Yeah. Oh no, it's
great.
but you see that the thing is that it's to the point now. It's where I think worldwide where good luck trying to get on the property ladder because
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like unless you somehow are great at saving in your teens, you know, you're not getting anywhere near it. And Toronto is to the point now where it's going so much that people don't like. Not even Toronto. If you live outside of Toronto, which is, and you're within it, you get within the train into Toronto. Like if you're within 30 minutes to an hour outside of it, you're paying.
Yeah, metro
Like-
commuter. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I mean, if you commute, I used to live in a place called Thornhill, which was, and I like it. I think it's beautiful. I think that whole area is beautiful. Could I afford to live there? Not in a million fucking years could I afford to live there. And it's to the point now where I can't, like, it's sooner or later it's going to hit its peak. Like it can't continue because people, they need to put people in those apartments and those houses in Toronto. So sooner or later they're going to go, well, it's empty. Do I keep it at this high or do I lower it so I can actually have people living in there? You know, so.
Glenn, I'm moving to a house that just had both the bathrooms renovated, had the refrigerator replaced, had all the door locks done, had an alarm system installed, had the garage doors repaired, laundry machine replaced, and it was built in 1982.
Yeah.
It's 45 minutes from Vancouver, and it sold for 1.2 million.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I just had a look, and the thing with the prices in Sydney is depending on the suburb. There's obviously some really upmarket suburbs, like where the Prime Minister lives and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the median is $595 a week rent.
Jesus.
A
So
week.
600, so 2,400 a month.
Yeah.
For 2 bedrooms. Now, I'm 2 hours from Sydney, and I just had a look, and it's $613. It's $18 dearer where I live, 2 hours from Sydney.
Yeah.
Well, that's it's ridiculous. Like it's to the point that's, you know, like.
So I think I'm going to move to Sydney. Save $18.
Yeah, you know, Sammy, one of the things that really puzzled me until kind of I spoke to you and a couple of other friends who've spent time working in Australia, but we get so many servers up here that are young, pretty Australian girls, especially in Whistler Village. And Whistler Village, if you want to rent there or live there, is, I don't know if it's the most expensive place in Canada, but it might be. But they come up and they live in 500 square foot rooms that have beds that like fold up, like Murphy beds or whatever that fold up. And they share the place with another person.
Sure.
And work in the service industry up there. There are servers and hostesses and what have you in the industry. And there's droves of them when the mountains open, right? Like in the ski season, the place is just packed with people from Australia, and they seem to like this lifestyle or like, you know, getting out of the country and getting into a situation like this. But I can't imagine if they partied even a little up there. Every drink, I mean, we're all talking Canadian dollars here, but like drinks are $12 to $16 a drink, and of course there's the pretty girl privilege, right? Where they go into a bar and in the right outfit, they never spend a penny. So, but I don't know. I don't know how they justify like being away from home and the cost of the flight and living in a tiny shoebox and doing that. I don't.
Have you heard of this thing called credit cards?
So there's probably a number of factors, like, well, credit cards, one. A lot of them come with money or have backing from their parents.
Perhaps.
If things go wrong. I don't know how you tip there in Canada, but I imagine in those areas the tips would be pretty good. And I
Well,
imagine
that's
they
the other
don't.
thing is there's a lot of foreigners in Whistler, so they don't know the money that well. So they just use the debit thing and click the highest amount, and away they go. Right. So
Well, also, I think it's how many of those people stay in Canada during the summer? Most of them probably go back to Australia and then come back in the winter, right?
it depends on the type of visa they get. Some of them are 6 months, some of them are 2 years. But if you're on a 2-year one, you have to leave the country for a specific amount of time after that. If they're coming here as seasonal labor, which obviously you can't right now, but if they're coming here as seasonal labor, as soon as their job is no longer available, they are supposed to leave within, I think it's 2 weeks. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, this is like you say, if they're living in a tiny place, they're never paying for drinks. They're probably saving a lot of money, and just taking all that back to Australia when they're done, right? You assume.
Lance, I have to actually cut out because I have to go do that job thing. I have to go make out some paper.
Oh, right. Yeah. Best of luck with that whole job thing. And
Now, that doesn't mean people should be contributing to my Patreon. Remember, I just want to plug that in.
I'm out of work right now, so if someone wants to contribute to my non-existing Patreon, go right ahead.
Right.
Just send me a boatload of money. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even be happy with a raft of money, to tell you the truth. I don't need a boat. I'd be just like a raft.
Perhaps a dinghy or a sloop full of cash would be fine.
I have very modest needs, to tell you the truth, as anyone who knows me knows. All right, but gentlemen, thanks for showing up today.
Yeah, thanks for indulging our Canadian content and our. I got a bit ranty today. You know, some days the coffee agitates me, but once again, lovely to be a contributor to the conversation, and lovely to hang out with you guys. And we'll do it tomorrow.
Awesome.
I'll be here tomorrow.
See you guys tomorrow.
Always fun.
Take care, everyone. Thanks everyone in the chat for showing up.
Too.
Much appreciated.
My pleasure. Laters.